Welcome to 90 over 90. My name is Rob Sumner, and it's my pleasure to visit with Conrad Norwood Carter. Conrad was born on October 23rd, 1921 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Correct.
And was married to the late Barbara L. Carter.
Correct.
For 43 years, and was fortunate enough to find another Barbara, and was married to Barbara Carter for 25 years, second
Right.
Barbara Carter.
Right.
Conrad built a successful and career and business with State Farm for many years, from which he is retired. He now lives in Winston-Salem. He's the father of two children, Martha and Susan.
That's correct.
And
Susan.
proud grandfather of two, Wendy and Robin, and great-grandfather of twins, Liza and Luke.
Correct. Got you.
Thanks for being here, Conrad, and being a part of 90 over 90. I know it's maybe changes your afternoon a little bit, but hopefully we'll have some fun and learn a little bit about your life. How about that?
It's my pleasure, and I'm pleased to be here.
Well, thank you. Let's start off with growing up in Winston-Salem, because
Okay.
that is of significant interest to me, and I think it'd be interesting to other folks.
Yes.
Tell us what it was like in the 20s and early 30s growing up in a town that was known for tobacco.
Yeah. Well, I came up with 10 siblings. The eldest, unfortunately, died in an accident, ice storm.
Mm-hmm. So you had a full house.
We had two siblings that didn't survive in their infancy, so it left eight of us for Mom and Papa to take care of, and they did rather well. We never were hungry, but we were very well disciplined and well loved, well cared for.
What was tell me a little bit about the household, Carter household. You were obviously growing up during the Depression.
Well, obviously, yes, very much so. I remember it very well. Of course, being born in 1921, when the Depression hit in 29, I was 8 or 9 years old, and I knew that we didn't know what money was. Just to see a nickel was a real treat. But my father, he was very, very industrious and innovative, and he worked for Reynolds Tobacco Company, and he would farm any piece of land that he could and share with the people in addition to his job. And so we were never hungry, and we always were clean. We always had clean clothes and everything. But we were very disciplined, and their passion was that they wanted their children to be educated, and so most of them did have the opportunity to go on and get beyond the public schools into a little higher education. So, but we didn't know the difference, and that was just life. We didn't know that times were hard or anything like that. We just took it as it was dealt out to us and moved along. So,
well, that's probably speaks to your later success. But let's talk a little bit more about that. Your mom obviously was at home trying to raise the children, I guess.
That's correct, yes.
So she is responsible for everything that, discipline and all that?
She was queen of the home. She was the queen of the household. But when it came to real discipline, Dad got a hold of us and took care of it.
That's when you knew you were in trouble.
But that's right, yes.
Let me ask you this, do you have fond memories of growing up in Winston? Where did you live in Winston? And tell us a little bit about the neighborhood.
I remember we lived off of Main Street, back where old South Park School used to be. It's not there now. But we lived off of South Main Street, back down the hill there, and sort of isolated. And then we moved up to South Main Street. My dad was fortunate enough to be able to buy a home. We owned the home place. And
how big was it?
Yeah, well, the upstairs wasn't finished. I remember that, and then he said, the family's growing. We got to do something for these boys so they'll have a room together themselves, and two sisters, so they would have a room. And so he went up, and he and one of our neighbors, they went in there and put rooms in and a bathroom in there. and that's where we grew up. I mean, we grew up there to grown boys, young teenagers.
Sounds like it was almost like a dorm room.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the way it was. And but it was very comfortable. We didn't know what a central heating was or anything like that. Air conditioning, we didn't know what that was. All that came along later in the 40s, you know. Later.
Right. Well, did you go to a local public school?
Yes, we went to public school, went to South Park through the grammar grades, and then we went to South High, which I went there for three levels. And then my mother, she didn't think any diploma was any good unless it came from Reynolds High. Mm-hmm. So in my 11th grade, she has managed to get me transferred to Reynolds for the 11th grade, so I graduated from Reynolds High School in 1938. And so I was fortunate enough we had some people asking how'd you get there back and forth. That's back in the trolley days, streetcars, you know, ran on electric power and so forth. But we're fortunate enough we had a teacher across the street in our neighborhood, and I could ride with him in the morning and ride with him back in the afternoon. If I didn't, it was tough getting from Reynolds over to the other side of town.
Right.
But anyway.
Well, you mentioned your dad worked for R.J. Reynolds. What did he do for them? And tell me a little bit about his work.
He was a line foreman, and that meant that he managed workers who were processing chewing tobacco, like days' work, and I don't know whether Apple was one of their products or not, but he supervised them, and he had a real good supervisor himself. And then his name was not J.T. Jordan, but not even related J.T. Jordan, who was principal at Reynolds High when I graduated from there. Pop Joyner, we called him. Anyway, he said he was interested in his employees, wanted to work under his supervision. He said, Mr. Miles, I see one of your boys is graduating from high school. What you going to do with him? He said, well, I'll do like I did all the rest of them. Put him to work, get him start paving his own way. He said, no, we can't do that. We got to do something better than that. And, he said, I've arranged for him to go to Mars Hill College. You have him up there next Tuesday, and I'll have a place for him to stay. And my daddy said, we can't afford that. We can't afford it. He said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. So he had me all registered for Mars Hill, place to stay, got me enrolled, and just took the bull by the horn, so to speak. And they were good enough to give me work to do, and I had student aid, and so I didn't know where the money came from for my education, but it was taken care of. And
wow.
So that's how I got my limited associate art degree in business administration, primarily in accounting. And
so neither of your parents, I guess, attended college.
Yeah. Oh well, I had two sisters and one brother that all went to higher education. Mm-hmm. A fact of the matter, my sister Grace Carter Eford, I'll drop a name here. She was very active in the school system here, the chairman of the board and all that. And C. Douglas Carter, Doug Carter, he was my baby. He started these governor schools, picking out the brightest and sharpest kids from different schools, mm-hmm. and took them in the summertime, and they had special emphasis on the education. They named the school here after him.
No, it was a governor school in Winston-Salem.
Yeah. Well, okay.
I'm sure there were different places.
He started that, yeah.
Right.
And they'd bring in two from the different arts and sciences and the technical stuff and bring them together where they would associate with each other.
So your brother and sister are well known for that in this area. Your dad, he was a line foreman, so what did they do? What did he actually in charge of?
They took tobacco, made plugs, and pressed them for chewing, for distribution, sell them. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did. That was a big deal in Reynolds back then. They had the Prince Albert Crip Cut pipe tobacco. Uh-huh. They had the Camel cigarettes. They had the chewing tobacco. They had snuff. they did all of those things. And
Could you smell when you went outside? I guess you probably got used to it. Could you smell the tobacco?
you know, never really noticed it. We had a friend who lived a block from us, down toward town from us. This is where I got started smoking. Mama would allow us to do a little rabbit tobacco smoking wrapped up in newspaper, and that was okay. We could get by with that. But later on, Dad, they would allow him to take imperfect chewing tobacco and bring it home, you know, if he wanted it and so forth. And then one down the street, he worked in the cigarette department. They allowed him to bring the defective cigarettes, so they started exchanging them. And my brother and I, we got smart. We said, we got some cigarettes here. We don't have to use rabbit tobacco, and we'd wrap it up in the newspaper and smoke and back and forth. But
now you graduated from Reynolds High,
right,
in late 30s, 38.
Well, 38, yes.
Did you go to work? Oh, you went to Mars Hill and got your business associate degree?
I graduated in 1940. Times were really tough then, you know. The
war had not started, at least in the United States.
No, it hadn't started then, and I started putting my applications in every place, any place that would take it. And I worked for a farmers cooperative dairy down there near Salem Creek, and I'd work odd hours and ride the bicycle to and from work, glad to get the job. And then his sister, who was in the education system, she knew Von Lloyd. He was a recreation director, and so he took me on, and that way I could work decent hours, you know. And I had the application I put it in everywhere anybody would take one. But I had one in for the Greyhound, and I'll never forget this. My older brother came up and said, "Cod, they won't talk with you about Greyhound." This was all within a year. And I said, "Okay, done now?" He said, "No, they will see you tomorrow." I also made arrangements to meet with Mr. Bob Bowden, wonderful person. He was sort of head knocker for Greyhound. So I went in for the interview, and he said, "Looking at your credentials here and so forth," he says, "I understand you took business and so forth. Do you take dictation?" I said, "Yes, sir, I took shorthand." He said, "Take a letter." I took a letter. He said, "Now transcribe it for me." I said, "Okay." He said, "Now type it for me." I said, "Okay." And he started putting me through some numbers and things. He asked me all kinds of questions and so forth. And I'll never forget it. He looked me straight in the face. He said, "Young man," I thought he was going to say, "We can't use you." "Young man, I want you to know that I'm going to hire you, and I'm going to give you 30 cents an hour instead of 25. 25 was the limit, was the minimum pay back then. That was under FDR because he had come in. And I'll never forget that. So I started my work in the maintenance department in the Greyhound, and apparently I did things well. And they said, we need you to go to West Virginia.
Were you happy with the 30 cents an hour?
Well, I was happy with anything. Happy with the job, just having the job.
Well, let me take us back for just a second. One of the things you told me when we spoke several weeks ago, that you remember your mom saying, maybe it was your mom and your dad, was, or a lesson they gave you was to always hold your head up high.
That's right.
Tell me about that. And
well, we get, you know, kids be kids, and you sort of compared yourself with others and that sort of thing. You knew who had money, and knew who lived here, and you knew her. You had class distinction whether you wanted to admit it or not. And we knew our place, but it was just a subconscious position, you see. And but when she'd see if we'd get down in the dumps or something, felt like we had to accomplish something, she said, "Let me tell you, young man, you hold your head up high. You're somebody, and you do what you feel to do, as long as it's in line with proper activity and so forth." And I never forgot that.
Well, did you feel like that with all the kids that you had a close family? Did you feel close to your
we had a
parents?
very close family. Boy, you better not do anything to one of the others. They're ready to come in on, swarm in on you, and defend you, and so forth.
Well, you had a lot of troops in reserve, I guess.
Yeah, not my older brother, but the brother next to me, he was a sportsman. His name Miles Carter. His name's pretty well known around Winston-Salem anyway because of his sports. But boy, you better not do anything to me, one of the others there. He'd take them to task, but he'd straighten me out too when I would do things wrong too. He didn't mind beating me up quite frequently, but
that's what brothers do.
Yeah, that's right.
You also, I think, told me that you were a band member, that you were interested in orchestra.
Yes, I attended Trinity Moravian Church over in South Side on Spring Street. As soon as I was christened and baptized there, and as soon as one was able to read and write, that sort of thing, to be able to read notes and so forth, and have the physical ability to blow some type of instrument, well, they got me a trumpet, and the volunteers at Trinity, they taught me how to play the trumpet. And I must not have been more than 8 or 9.
I should have brought one for you to work out today.
No, hadn't touched it since college. But anyway, they taught me how to do that, and I played in the sunrise service. We'd have our presentation. When we have a death at the church, we'd go up into the tower, up the top, and play a song announcing to the community that there was a death from the congregation. I played in the sunrise service until I went off to school. We'd get up at 2 o'clock and go around and play a line from the music in front of members' homes. And then we'd come down to Old Salem, and we'd come there and have some refreshments and rest a little bit. Then we'd go take our positions out into God's Acre back then. And so I did that for, I don't know, I guess 8 or 10 years, from 9 to 16 or somewhere along there. And
must have had an impact on you.
We had a large number of musicians in our church, and we had 2 units, and one would go in the country and one would go in the city and play a line from a chorale. And but that was great fun, and I did play in the orchestra at Reynolds High School also too. So that was just sort of a continuation of.
Was the trumpet a magnet for the ladies?
Well, I'll never know about that, but I always felt somehow that I was attracted to the ladies for some reason. I never seemed to have any problems having a girlfriend, but anyway.
What was social? Story. What was it? And we'll move on. I want to talk about your Greyhound work, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about what social life was like for Conrad Carter. What did you do for fun, and kind of describe a little bit about that before the war. Obviously, the war changed a lot of things.
Well, we made our own activity fun. We had our chores at home. Each one had a special thing they had to do, and I won't go in detail on that. But as far as activity, we didn't know what. We didn't have TV. We didn't have stuff like that. We just had to develop our own activity. So we'd pitch horseshoes. We'd play softball. We would play hide and seek. We'd say kick the can. We'd get to go down to the woods, climb from tree to tree, swing from tree to tree, use baker slingshots, get plums and shoot the plums. Just things like that. We created our own activity, and in the summertime, the recreation department would go to certain areas of town and have a director there for kids to come and occupy their time for maybe 3 or 4 hours a day. And we play ping pong and softball and stuff, tennis. I was a pretty good tennis player in my day, and soccer, I was something else. I was just a star in that.
I didn't know they even had soccer.
Yeah, back then, yes, this goes way back. This was in the grammar grades. And I was captain in the safety patrol. You ever heard of that?
I have.
We wanted to help the students cross the street and so forth and so on.
Doesn't sound like you got sent to the principal's office very often. You must have
No,
been pretty,
pretty
obedient.
We lived next door to the school, and Miss Mary Eggleston, she was the principal. She was down to my mama's house in a minute. If I didn't do anything wrong. I was a pretty good fella. I tried to do what was right. And,
now, well, I think you did. I think getting back to what we talked about earlier about being in a large family and having all the things you have to do when you have to accommodate other folks.
Yeah.
You got to take your time. You've got to wait your time. You got to take your
Right,
turn.
yeah.
You got to help, do other chores and things to make the system work.
Right.
And I think that's probably served you well. So you went to getting back to your job. I know Greyhound, they sent you to West Virginia.
Yeah, they did. I didn't know where I was going to stay or what or where we'd eat or anything like that, but I went out of blind faith. It's what they were doing was for my benefit, and I was there for, I guess about less than a year, and then they were developed in this new maintenance department in Richmond, Virginia. Then they want me to go over there to help get that set up there, and we had a new CEO to come in, Greyhound. Greyhound, when I came along, was big. It was a way to get from one place to the other. I mean, it was a network that moved a lot of people, and that's one of the things that I ended up in the transportation end of it. And for that, I had an occupational deferment for registration for military service. But every time they called me to go to Fort Bragg, they say he's got to keep him here because we would transport. But I got off subject there.
That's all right. It's not really off subject.
In the maintenance for 13 years, and then they said, this CEO said, look, we're not bringing on supervision. We're not doing anything to encourage that, and we're not training to do that. So he put out a notice to all over the United States now. If you're interested in management, submit your name. So I talked with my wife, and I said, look, this is just the same old job, handing out parts and doing this every day. I'm going to put my name in the pot. And so they accepted 1,500 candidates from all over the system, and they started interviewing us and giving us tests and so forth and so on. They narrowed it down to 500. I was still in the 500. They narrowed that down to 50. I was still in the 50. And I don't know where they went from there, but I had a call from a home office it was Atlantic Greyhound, was part of the Greyhound system back then. It all became Greyhound. Had a call, and I said, oh, Lord, what have I done something wrong? They asked for me to come over to Charleston, West Virginia from Richmond and wanted to talk to me about management. And well, it turned out that I was one of the 50 that they wanted to encourage to look at management and go on. And so they sent me to schools and things like that. And so evidently
turned you into a manager.
Turned me into a manager. And when they got to the place, they said, okay, we want you to go to Portsmouth, Ohio. I went to Portsmouth, Ohio. They were there for about 2 years, close to it. And the guys loved me, the drivers and all that. I mean, only because, not that I was partial to them in any way, they had contracts, union contracts. And I treated them fair. I treated them the way to the letter of the law. There wasn't any question. Supervisors in the past had tried to take advantage of it because they had that power to fire you or hire you, that sort of thing. So we got things going pretty well there, and next thing I knew, they said, we'd like to go to Charlotte, North Carolina. Won't you go down there? This is a superintendent of the district, you see. And I went down, and here it was even a greater responsibility. We had maintenance shop there, had about 40 drivers to supervise, had to work with the terminal, the terminal where you board bus and so forth on.
Well, riding the bus was the way you got around. A lot of people didn't have cars.
But Greyhound was good to me. I mean, they took care of me real well. But I think I told you this. This guy where I went to church, he kept talking to me about insurance. I said, "You're crazy, man." He said, "No, I want you to look at it."
You mean as a job?
As a job, leaving Greyhound after 30-some years, you see. 36 years, no, it wasn't 36 years, 20 years. But anyway, he kept talking to me, and he convinced me. Well, I had the 2 daughters I need to educate. And I wanted them to have a decent college education. My older one went to Guilford. She chose to go to state-supported, which thrilled me because
we know about the tuition.
Yeah, we know about it. But anyway, haven't seen a moment there for a minute. But he kept talking with me, saying you can do this and do that and the other, which had an unlimited potential for income. With Greyhound, you had your steps you had to take. Well, I thought about this, and I thought about it, and I said, "You're crazy. I would go in insurance." And he said, that was when the compulsory liability came in law. He said, "Look, all these people driving cars, they got to have insurance." But it ended up, I did make the move, and my friends and relatives and family and everybody else said, "You must be crazy, Conrad. Your job, you got a prestigious job with Greyhound, expense account, a car, and all that kind of stuff. But that wouldn't put my girls through school, you know." So anyway, but I had 2 of the toughest years of my life. But I persevered. I went on to build one of the most successful agencies in State Farm, and we had regional districts back then. We had one of the top districts in the eastern region. And,
well, it seems like to me I know you don't think of yourself as a salesman, maybe you do, but you seem like you kind of had some talents.
Had to be a salesman there, yeah.
Some hidden talents.
I built a good agency, and after 2 years I built an agency far more income than what I was getting with Greyhound. But they said, "Okay, they thought I was doing such a good job, said, "We want you to look at management." I said, okay. I said, I guess I was getting big-headed or something back then, and I said, "Okay, I'll go see what you got to offer." So we went to Charlottesville, several sessions there, and explaining what the responsibilities be with an agency manager, but mainly it was recruiting and training, and so out of 35 potential person that came to school, they selected about 12. As they wanted them to become agency managers, you know. And
you were one of those, I think.
I was one of them, and I said, but only one condition. I could have gotten a good agency that's already established, an agent that already established to go in, but I said, "No, I'm not leaving Charlotte. I'm through moving. I'm not leaving Charlotte. If you want me to go into management, I'll accept college." So I inherited 2 agents, and I built that in the course of 36 years. Over a period of time, I built that into an agency of 17 agents, you know. I recruited and trained Gastonia, Lincoln, Caldwell, Catawba, Hickory, and Lenore. And David had one of the state senators. I had a state senator, one of my agents, Jim McDuffie, and I had can't think of his name, proceed a moment, in Lenore. He went on to go into politics too, but he was a successful agent, but he left because he dealt in politics more than he did insurance. But I built a agency that was one of the top 50 agents districts in the whole of the United States. 17, but I recruited and trained, and I explained them when I would talk to them about the opportunity. I told them exactly what I would do and what they would be expected to do, and if you will do it, I guarantee you success. And I never lost an agent that I recruited because
it's all about leadership, and I think
right.
you were showing that. I want to ask you a couple of questions.
Right.
We're getting close to the end of our time.
Yeah.
No, that's all right, because I think that one thing that struck me about you when we met some months ago was how I know you still do investing, and this seems very active. And I was wondering if you could share with us maybe some of your secrets for remaining so active and involved, and then I want to talk to you just a moment about your. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday about as one grows older, your spiritual life kind of changes. You look at things a little differently. But first, tell me what is it? What is your secret for being so active and
well, I guess
at 95?
I guess if there's a secret, it's being active, and the question that keeps coming in my mind, and what motivates me, I want to count for something. I just don't want to mark time. I want to be able to contribute to help our culture and our society and our country grow and become something. So I get involved. That's one of the first things here. We have a governing body at Arbor Acres, which is called Resident Council. They make the rules and regulations for what we do here, subject to the major Arbor Acres board. It's just like a little legislative body, and so I got active in that. I'm a representative of that. I got active in there's this group here that does singing and so forth, called Sharps and Flats. I sing in that. I also sing in another group. We have a lady comes from Centenary Methodist each Tuesday. We have what we call the Shepherd's Choir that sings on Sunday night and Vesper service. I just believe in I want to count for something, and I keep asking myself, God, what do you want me to do? I'm still searching, but what? And I ran across we did a little entertaining. Second wife, we did some Hawaiian dancing and so forth and singing, and
I'd like to see that.
We had we did over 500 performances over a 25-year period.
Oh my gosh!
We had one song and it haunts me. It's still, I got it in my pocket. I won't try to. I'll give you just a little bit of it. It says, "He's still working on me to make me what I ought to be. It took him just a week to make the moon and the stars, the earth and his planets, and Jupiter and Mars. How loving and caring he must be. He's still working on me." And I keep telling Susan, my daughter, the other daughter, I said, I don't want to be here marking time. I want to know how I can contribute to our society. And she says, "Daddy, you're doing it. You're comfortable to people. You recognize them. You send notes and cards and things like that." And so I feel like that's what I'm around here for. That's why he's given me these additional years, because it's questionable. I don't want to be a person, just someone feed me and make my bed up and that sort of thing. I want to contribute for my presence. I don't know how to put it.
Well, I think you put it great. I want to thank you. You've contributed to 90 over 90 for allowing us to talk a little bit about your life. I know there's much more that we could talk about that you'd like to say, but I think the folks that watch this will appreciate the kind of person you are, and the work that you put in, the family you've raised, and all the good things that you've left in your wake. But I have to say that I don't think you're through yet. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope that this has been meaningful to many out there that might see this, that God's using us all as There's a purpose for each and every one of us. And so just keep searching, keep looking, and keep praying, and it'll come to you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're a fine person. Thank you.